Okay, let's get started. Before we start creating our first file and open a first window on the screen, I'd like to take you to the GitHub repository, which hosts all the code. So let's just bring up Safari here, and then go to github.com, my GitHub username, so it's a slash then, my GitHub username is jhanneman. And then the repository itself is called Pong. And so when you type that in to your browser, and it takes you to the code repository. So if you ever get stuck, you can look up the source code right there, and also the development history. So there are a little introduction down here, of course, and but there's also two important links. One actually is a link to the written instructions that are basically the scripts for this video, or for these videos. So if you click on that, it will take you to the relatively long file that does the walkthrough, including installation instructions for Python and Pygame, but then of course all the things we'll be doing from here on. The other thing that is there is another link to the YouTube channel, that the YouTube playlist actually, that contains all these videos as well. So and again, clicking on that brings you to the playlist, which I'm currently building, of course. So with that out of the way, let's jump in and start up idle and write a first program to just open a blank window on the screen. So again, I'm going to do the spotlight search and bring up idle. And here we have idle with the Python shell, where we could type in Python commands directly, but we want to save our program in a file so that we can come back later and run it. So, and we do this by going here, of course, to File, and then New File, and that's it. So, blank slate, and somewhat intimidating, a little bit of writer's block, but you'll see we'll have to write a couple lines to get things going, but it's not as bad as you think it is. So the first thing we'll have to do is we'll have to import, of course, the Pygame module, but we'll also have to import one other module to communicate with the operating system. So let's do the following here and say import this, import sys. Import this, by the way, is another Easter egg. You can try that out. And then import Pygame. So the first module sys provides a way to safely terminate our program when the user closes the window, or later on we'll also do this so that the game is ended when the escape key is pressed. The second one is Pygame itself, of course. And then we'll do something for convenience and say from pygame.locals import everything or star. This is the asterisk. So Pygame comes with a set of local identifiers, for instance, to identify events and key presses. These identifiers are used frequently in any Pygame game, and the from Pygame locals import star relieves us from the need to always prefix those names with pygame.locals. So next up, we need to pick values for our window width and window height, and also the background color. So let's do that here. So this is window width is 640. Window height is 480. And then we're going to define the color black as 0, 0. Okay, so um, and so we use a single equal sign here, and later on we're going to actually also encounter a double equal sign, and the single equal sign attaches a value to a name, call that also a variable, whereas the double equal sign later on represents a test for equality, and that result can be either true or false. So we'll see that later on. So we chose a window width here of 640 pixels and a window height of 480 pixels. This is the original VGA display resolution. I picked it for another reason than that. The variable black contains the red, green, and blue, or RGB values for the color black. And not surprisingly, black is the absence of all colors, and therefore all three individual RGB values are 0. The notation of several values separated by a comma and enclosed in parentheses is called a tuple in Python. We will encounter more tuples of them, or more tuples when we are actually code our game. So one other note on constants here. So the 3 lines we wrote define constants, which are values that will not change during the execution of our game. There is a convention in the instructions, we'll call these PEP 8, which is a Python Enhancement Proposal version 8, that defines how Python programs should be written. And by this PEP 8 convention, we use all upper caps letters for the variable names, so that programmers reading our code will know about our intentions. It's common to collect constants at the top of a program so that they are easy to find. This provides programmers with a single point in the code should they want to change the value of a constant. Also, sequence uses of the constant will use then the new value, of course. So in game design, an approach like that enables rapid testing, and we call this balancing of a game. In the case of Pong, our initial choice of speed for ball may be, for instance, too high or too low, making the game too hard or too boring. And then we can have a game tester who can then easily and quickly change the ball speed value by changing the value for the associated constant at the top of the game code. The other thing that you see here is that words here are separated by underscores, and that simply is because the space character has a specific meaning. It usually separates, for instance, in this case, names from other things like the equal sign. So we cannot have names, spaces in variable names. So whenever we have spaces, we just use underscores. Okay, so then next slides we're going to initialize Pygame. We open a window of the specified size and then set the window title to Pong. So this is done with this pygame.init. That initializes Pygame. And then I'm going to write a little comment here. So comment lines can be started with a hashtag. You can actually also have that at the end of a line. So everything after Python encounters a hashtag will be ignored until the end of the line, and the next line begins. So here I'm just going to say set up the window, and then I'm going to do this here. So I'm going to create another variable here, display surface, and then I'm going to tell Pygame, specifically the display part of Pygame, to actually set mode to window width and window height. And then I'm just going to say now that tell Pygame to set the caption of the window to Pong. Okay, so the display surface is a constant that represents our game window. Python does all its drawing on surfaces, and the display surface happens to be the one that is connected to our screen. That connection is set up by the pygame.display.setMode function call. And you'll see those parentheses here. We've talked about tuples before. So as usual in mathematics, arguments are passed into functions with parentheses. But the window width and window height is a single tuple with two values. So that's what explains the two sets of parentheses. So that pattern is common in Pygame. We'll encounter this a couple more times down the road. So let's do the what we call the main loop of the game. A video game is essentially an infinite repetition, or we call that also a loop, of three things. Number one, we're going to process events. Number two, we're going to update the game state. And number three, we're going to draw the game scene. So events are changes that the game needs to react to. In our case, this means user input, typically in the form of key presses and releases. And in the case that comes up now, it's the quit event, which is generated by Pygame when the user actually takes the mouse and clicks the button to close the game window. So Gamestate is simply referring to all the values of all the variables and objects that make up our game at any given point in time. So it's a fancy name for basically what the complete game looks like to the computer at any given time. As we'll see down the road, it can be very useful to assign individual explicit states to objects, such as our pedals, and to define events that allow us to transition between those states. Systems like that are called finite state machines, and they are used a lot in game development and in engineering, actually, in general. It's a very powerful concept. Since there are no events that would change our game state as of now, that section doesn't exist as of yet, but we'll add it shortly on. So, and then draw the game scene. So just like a movie, a video game is presented to a player as a sequence of still images, one frame at a time. And the simplest approach, which we'll take here, would simply just start with an empty picture at the beginning of each frame, erasing the previous content by filling it with, in our case, all black, and then draw the scene piece by piece using the current game state. That is the position of our current game objects, such as our pedals and ball. When we're done drawing, we can tell Pygame to transfer the current frame to the window on the screen. So let's look at how this actually looks like. So I'm going to write another comment here saying main game loop. And then I'll just write an infinite loop. I'll talk about that in a little bit. So Python uses indentation to specify things, and here idle automatically inserted the default 4 spaces for us. So first up is the process of events. And so here we're going to write what's called an iteration for event in game dot event dot get, and then if the event type is equal to quit, here is our double equal sign. It sets it apart from the assignment part. So then we just do a pygame dot quit. So we quit our Pygame infrastructure, and then, and this is why we needed the sys module, we're gonna exit orderly to the operating system, telling the operating system that it is okay to release all the memory that the game was using. So that's our processing of events, and now we can draw the scenes. And this is going to be right now relatively simple. We're just going to tell our display surface to fill with black that we have defined in the top. And then all we have to do here is do a Pygame display update so that all the changes are being transferred to our screen. So what you see here is a classic while loop. So, but this loop is special because usually what happens here is that there is a condition instead of just the true that would allow us to actually end the loop. So effectively, with the variable, with the expression always being true, this is an infinite loop, but it of course is being ended when we actually end the program, right? So you can look that up in the instructions in a little bit more detail, but let's go ahead and look at the process event section a little bit more. So we've seen here, so this is right here, the process events. And so events can happen at any time during the execution of the main game loop. Pygame then collects these events for us so that we can then, at a time that we choose, react to them. So it's collects these events in an event list, and the line that says for event in pygame.event.get starts an iteration over all the elements in the list, and with each execution of the iteration, which again is a special case of a loop, the variable event will then contain the next item from the event list. And then with the if statement, we just simply check whether the current event type is the quit event, and if so, we quit Pygame and exit the program. And right now we ignore all other events that may be coming our way. So then the draw scene section. So very simple right now. We just fill our display surface with black and then tell Python or Pygame to transfer the window content to the computer screen. So we'll of course add drawing commands between those two lines when writing the rest of our game. So now for the exciting part, we can run this, and we can run this by selecting here run and then run module, and then idle of course will ask us that we have to save this first, and yes, and since we haven't given it a name yet, we're asked to provide a name for it, and default location is fine wherever you want to put it. Actually, let's put this onto the desktop, maybe not be a bad idea, and I will just call this thing pong.py for Python. So, and when we save this now, that program is being run, and as you can see, we have a syntax error here. So we need to so this happens a lot when we type things in. Let me first close this window here. So, and it says here that the name event type is not defined. So let's go back. I'll just close this, and then see here. And what I did here is quite simple. This is not an event underscore type. This is an event dot type. So obviously I made that mistake. You'll see me doing this a little bit more. Certainly, because I will make mistakes as I type this up, and Python will tell us when it's not happy, and then we'll have to figure out what's going on. So let's do this again. So run module, and then save. And this time around, you see that the window comes up. It has 640 by 480 pixels in size. It has the title Pong, and so that's that, and the game is running, and we have our first success. So next up is drawing the playing field.